Welcome to AllView 360, All Things Real Estate Podcast, with your hosts, Daniel Gutierrez and Shannon Dempsey. We explore real estate from every angle, giving you insights, tools, and confidence to make smart decisions that support your future. It's time for a new perspective on property. Welcome to AllView 360. Hi, Daniel.
Good morning, Shannon.
I'm very excited for today. I've established that I will definitely be learning more than contributing today, which is very exciting. Do you want to introduce your friend, an AI
Absolutely.
extraordinaire?
Yes. So I think I'll be learning as much. Selfishly, we brought him on this podcast so we could learn. I feel like every day I talk to him, I learn more and more and more. And this is an insane topic, an insane space. And Bryan is the best, hands down. So Bryan is the founder and CEO of Baytech Consulting. They are a software development company, primarily focusing on the finance, healthcare, and manufacturing industries, but knows so much more about all industries and has an extensive experience within real estate, mortgage industry, loans, and is just an absolute leader in this space. So thank you, Bryan, for being on today with us. And I can assure you and everyone that's listening, they're in for a treat and a lot of experience and education in regards to AI and how it applies to real estate right now.
Well, thanks for having me, Shannon and Daniel. I'm happy to be here and hopefully shed light on anything AI related or technology related, and happy to participate.
Amazing. How do you know each other?
We're in EO together. So we're in a forum together in EO, that's Entrepreneurs Organization. I think we've chatted about it a few times on the podcast.
Yeah, very lucky to have, very excited to have Dan. We've been in it for almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a great crew of entrepreneurs, and my life has definitely been enhanced by having Daniel in it. So I definitely appreciate it.
Likewise.
That's so nice.
And then on the culture index perspective, Bryan and I are very similar. He's a little bit nicer than me and a little less intense, but still very intense, and just an absolute badass in everything he does. But
I
also a
was
lot
very
nicer.
upset that I wasn't as intense. I think we were competing on the intensity, and I'm like,
On the intensity.
0.5% or whatever.
Winning's winning.
I just got a little nervous. I'll just be less intense over here.
But beyond the culture index, Bryan is also an incredible human being, super technical, but has a unique ability to make technical things very easy to understand and also very easy to implement, which, as so many of us know, especially within the real estate space, is moving quickly. AI is changing the game, but it's also very difficult to understand. The majority of us are more familiar with White Claw than we are with Open Claw. So bringing Bryan on to be able to help us understand what that landscape looks like and how it's changing the game, but also how we could better implement it into our day-to-day practice to help our business, our clients, and really be able to hopefully not even keep up, but keep ahead of the game and what we're doing.
Is it even possible to keep up with how fast it's moving? I feel like once I grasp one thing, it's something else right around the corner.
It's so true. For us as well. So, software development shifted in the last 3-4 years dramatically. I was reading a podcast, or I forget the gentleman who brought it up, but the different ages of software. Originally it was about devices and technology to do. It wasn't what you saw like in business applications. It was more machines. Think the space shuttle, and then we went into business applications. They called it the second age, and now we're in the third age, which is AI. And AI is moving at light speed. Specifically I would say over the last year or two, it has moved even faster. When they came out with the models and you were on ChatGPT and you asked it a bunch of questions, it was great, right? And it did a lot. It answered a lot of questions for you. One of the things it did for the technology industry, and me specifically, was I know a lot about a lot of different topics, right? But I can't remember every detail about every individual piece of software and how it operates. But AI can and did. So imagine you did a technology 5 years prior and you're like, okay, I know this could solve it. But, in the past, what you'd have to do is go pick up a manual, go look at the docs online. You'd have to go, okay, now I'm going to operate and adjust this piece of software with these settings. Well, what AI did was I could just ask it and it goes, oh yeah, this is how you have to do it. So for people that had a large breadth of knowledge on networking, software development, different systems that were out there, right, that had a lot of experience, it made you a lot more effective, right? And it took the kind of the fear away. Okay, well, I haven't worked on that in 5 years. Am I going to work on it now? Well, yeah, I know exactly what it can do, but I forgot all the details of maybe operationalizing it, or doing it's not always coding in our industry either, right? You're dealing with systems and configurations and integrations that aren't necessary where you're going to code, but you need to remember how it actually worked. And AI just put it right at your fingertips. Recently, though, now it's automating a lot of what you do, right? So when it comes down to building an application, and I'm curious to see how far it goes. But I mean, you guys have seen it with the Lovables and the Replits of the world, and Claude Code itself now is. I think they're going to start releasing it to where you can build that app and not need Lovable or Replit, build it, and then even deploy it on Claude's infrastructure. So
With that being said, Bryan, something I didn't do, and I apologize. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your company, so we could get understanding of that basis, and then from there go on? And I want to start on the conversation we had while on the train down to San Diego, where you guys taught me that I could launch a website, company, and application with a short prompt that I didn't even make myself from my cell phone while on a train. But starting before that, a little bit about you and your company, please.
I just learned who we have to blame for some of your excitement and fast moving.
Oh, sure.
Bryan, it's your
Yeah,
fault.
Bryan. So yeah, founder and CEO of Baytech Consulting. We're a software development company. We've definitely shifted, to instead of just typing code as a team of developers to, using AI to produce software and technology for our clients, right? And it's the charter or the mission statement really hasn't changed. It's to improve the lives of our customers and make them operate more efficiently and effectively. When it comes down to automation or systems that they need to run their business, our team is designed to do that. So like in property management, if you needed something where, you wanted to communicate, have a system or a platform which I think there already are a ton of these that do this, and I'm sure you're operating them, but, your clients who you're doing property management on, a way to communicate exactly what's happening with their property, right? Through devices, through customer service, through, financial information, we would be able to build that from scratch. A company like ours, we've built systems for mortgage companies like, Cash Call and New American Funding, where it did everything from marketing to CRM management, customer lead marketing and management. So, and many other different types of companies. So that's kind of what we do. And then your question was, we were on the way to San Diego, right? And I believe we were using Versal. So Versal is one of the technologies that are out there. And you were thinking about starting, I think was it the service and not servicing, the
Construction.
construction company.
Oh, he did, Bryan, and he did it quickly. I'm guessing this is part of this conversation.
Yeah. So the construction company, there's a lot, so I don't remember exactly which one. And there's a lot of different platforms. That one, particularly at the moment, Versal was the best at the time. And they're still really good. But, there's a lot of competition out there. Google's come out with a bunch of them. Figma has them. I would still argue Versal's probably the best at building a, front end website in a short period of time and make it look professional. And within a few prompts, you just tell it what you're asking for. It's going to use AI, build it, and then deploy it on their platform. And the platform's really good too. That's another thing Claude's doing right now is taking out the Cloudflares and Versals. It might be too technical, but
Yeah, but for the application component of it, not the application as like an app, but for the average everyday user, Shannon, remember when you wanted to rebuild your website, you would go and you'd pay these web developers, thousands of dollars a month to pay or to build it, host it, and update it accordingly. Now, and I didn't even make the prompts, Bryan. Remember you told me to have, I think it was ChatGPT on deep research everything, make the prompts. I copy and paste into Zero, it built me a website, and I had it live, like a beautiful website live within 30 minutes, where it would have taken, weeks and thousands of dollars previously. Now that all of that technology is at every single realtor, broker, contractor, property manager's fingertips.
And when we're saying like looks professional, beautiful, it's just kind of the surprise that it happens so quickly that it looks that way, or it is professional and beautiful and equivalent to if it had been built out
I mean,
5,
you can
10 years
argue that
ago?
it's even superior to a lot of, What was it? The radiologist. There was a story about AI being able to read a scan. This is something you know a lot about, and they were about 85 or something like that percent accurate. Well, that or above 85% of the radiologists out there. So if you think about it from an AI perspective on building your website, there's a lot of different companies that have a lot of varying different degrees of quality of that what they would produce, right? Prior to AI. So yeah, it's in my opinion, it's you get really far really fast. I
Yeah.
would say this though, the more you think about it, right, the more you put into AI, the more you'll get out, right? So if you have more contacts, do more research, and you know about, you obviously are going to know about your company, and the more you feed it, the better the outcome's going to be. So
But on top of that, the more you feed it, the better the outcome is. But I remember even working with you on the blog road writing software that you developed. I mean, it was a game changer. And Shannon put in perspective, the majority of the blogs that are been on the company side for the last year or so, that was developed through Bryan's platform and Bryan's technology that implements all new types of AI, not just one but multiple, to be able to create really, really well written blogs that don't sound like AI. They sound like a real human, generate images and post it really within seconds.
yeah, and that was interesting technology. And the reason why, there's a lot of them out there. You guys, you can shake a fist and see a blog writing firm out there, and technology. I mean, you can do it right within Claude Cowork, or there's a lot out there now. At the particular time, this was probably April of last year. There really, for my industry, there really wasn't a great option. So for me, I wanted to have, when we post something, I want it to be really well researched. And then I also want the graphics to have a certain quality and the charts to have a certain quality. And it just didn't exist out there. One of the issues at the time, and actually it still exists, is when you're using ChatGPT or Claude, there's been a cap on its output, right? So I usually have larger in-depth articles, and there's a cap of like 2,000 tokens. To produce, right? Well, if you have a blog that's a large one that's heavily researched, it stops, right? So that's why you'll see a lot of the blog tools out there stop on a certain size. So I developed a process to make a really heavily researched, high quality article. I think that's what Stan's talking about.
But beyond that, I mean, it sounded incredible. The graphics were built in, and then you were able to post it really quickly. None of this was even possible before. You'd have multiple people writing the blog, doing the graphics, sending it to the web developer, putting it in. I mean, it's been a game changer. And something I do want to touch on, and something that I think that you've always been really good on, is SEO in the past and now AIO, and being able to keep ahead of that, because that is such an important factor for all of our industries. But could you touch on kind of that evolution and what people can expect and how they can stay on top of the game?
AIO is where you're, if anybody is not aware yet, is when you go into a search engine, AI, Google, it has obviously AI results at the bottom of it. And you type in, say, hey, I want a property management firm, or the best property management firm, or the firm that's near me, right? That's one way. And then what comes up in that results? What comes up in that results is a factor of the AI engine itself. So if it's Google or it's Claude or if it's OpenAI, they either do a search and then they find that information. So SEO still is a factor, right? So it's going to still use some sort of search in there. So the same types of processes still apply. What is the intent of that person when they're actually searching for it? So like, is somebody, I'll use my industry. How do I develop something in .NET, right? It's a technology. Well, that person isn't necessarily looking for a software developer to help them build it. They're looking on how to do it themselves. So there's two types of, searches, in, intents behind that person. Either it's commercial intent, somebody wants to use a property manager, or if somebody wants to learn about property management. I think both are still viable. And let me tell you why. Informational ones, right, where you're talking about, property management and how to do it well. And having somebody say, "Hey, I need a property manager." Those are two different types of intents, and I think they're still important. And blogging is still important, at least as of today, because here's what will happen. Imagine you go into a chat, a chat bot, any of the ones that are out there, and you start saying, "Okay, hey, how do I do this?" And at the end, you go, you decide after reading through all of it that you do want somebody that, if you have informational blogs that came up as a result prior to them asking that question, your name will be in there. So that's an informational intent. So if you provide good information to the internet, it's going to inject you into that answer. And then at the end, they might ask the question. So they might ask the question like, hey, give me the best one in my area. And then that also, if you want to be in that, there's another tactic to do that. And I don't know if you guys want to go through the tactics of that, but
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
mean, I want to go through the tactics of that.
But even for what, regardless of it's property management, but especially even realtors is such a hard specialty to be ranking for SEO or AIO. And I know Shannon's really been on top of this and trying to maximize her AIO. But yeah, learning about it would be hugely valuable.
Yeah, because I'm not good at it. And just real quick for perspective on that, in the real estate industry specifically, there's a lot going on with the different platforms that people typically search for homes on. Some are being restrictive. They're kind of eliminating their inventory in this data war that they're having. And all that to say, I think a lot of it's going to start leading towards, instead of going to the typical platforms to search for a home, I think people are going to start searching in whatever chat AI scenario that they're looking in. So now it's becoming more relevant to specifically do the property descriptions about your clients' homes in a way that will pull, what that person's searching for into their search. And it's something that property descriptions were important before, but now I think they're going to be one of the most important marketing tools. And I think it's incredibly important for the agents to understand what they need to be putting in those property descriptions to get their clients' homes out there more. So that's kind of a shift in our industry, AI, and just what's happening in our industry in general.
And didn't you have a seller reach out to you because you were the only agent that came up on?
That's the other, the clients are starting to look for their agent on ChatGPT, on Claude, and if your online presence isn't shooting you into that mix, even if you're the top agent in that particular neighborhood zip code and you don't have it dialed in on the back end, you're missing all of those potential clients, and then they're missing, possibly getting a really good agent. There could be a crappy agent that has really good online presence, and they're going to pop up as the number one person.
And just so you guys know how AI does it is, and so let's say you're in, one of these AI tools and you start asking a question, it's going to then go out and search. It will reformat your question to, something more normalized. Let's say, you chicken scratch something in there. It's going to fix that. Then it's going to do the search. And that's where SEO is going to come into play. So you don't have, exact control, because AI is going to take what you're asking, reformat it, and try to figure out your intent, and then search for it. So again, that goes back to two different things. So it's informational, I think, still helps. And let me kind of go back just one more step. Informational and commercial blogs, right? So commercial intent blogs or commercial intent pages. A commercial intent page is something where, again, hey, I want a property manager or I want a realtor, right? You build, and from an SEO perspective, pages that will capture that traffic, right? So you have inbound links for it. It's standard SEO practices. I don't know if you guys want me to go through all that, but basically the standard SEO where you're trying to rank for that keyword. You're trying to get other websites to provide authority for those keywords. So that's that intent, right? That still matters, because when you're in AI and you ask that question, it's going to then search that same question or reformat it potentially in a way, and then go to Google or go to some of the tools that it does to search the internet to provide that information back. If they start to do things like what is the best, right? Because that's kind of where it went, right? So before, and people did this too. So you would see this too, where people say, hey, give me the best realtor in my area. So you still need to rank for that if you want to come up in that result. The other thing I wanted to jump back to was informational. That's what I was trying to get to. Informational is still big, because if you provide a very in-depth article, right? So imagine you have call it, 3 times the size of a normal blog, and it has stats in there. And it's really a well-written blog about, real estate or property management. What will end up happening, and this happened to us when we did this in April of last year, we went from 200 inbound links to almost 1,000 inbound links with this strategy that I'm talking about right now, which is in-depth, comprehensive articles that provide a lot of detail, which sometimes people won't read because obviously it's big. People want like the quick Twitter response, but other people that create articles will then use your content and link to you. So a lot of the blog tools that are out there today what they do is they research. And if they see a big chunk of information, like from Baytech about, you know, Cloud Code or something, it will look at that and go, oh, okay, that's comprehensive. It will then create a link back to you on their blog. Because what they want to do is they want to cite the source that they got that information from. So that's the informational link building. And that link building will increase your whole site's visibility in all AI. So it kind of begets itself. So that's the informational side, which then builds your authority. So it builds your SEO up dramatically. We 20x'd our inbound traffic. Now, a lot of that was informational. A lot of it's AI trying to search our content. But then when they go to AI, we get a link back from that, right? Then when it comes down to commercial intent, which is, hey, I want the best person out there. That's a different strategy than what I just described. You now need to have multiple articles out there with you being the best in that article. So usually that comes down to like paid placements. And you could then come up like right now, if you said, best, probably try it right now, best vibe, engineers in Orange County, I think we're going to come up.
I'm
right?
going to try it.
So we'll come up in that list. So we're trying that now, but now you're only attacking that one word, right? Or that one phrase inside that. So the other thing too is that it only lasts so long because other people will start to put up more articles and it goes for recent articles. But that's kind of the strategy with search, AEO. A lot is not known for that right now, meaning it's not known exactly the effect of this. I've heard of ones that people are using AEO effectively and getting, a closed deal on it, or they're getting a client for real estate on it. But it's still, there's a little bit of magic behind there, right? So it reframes your question, and then what are those questions? Did that search that correct article, and then did it pop an actual link to your site? The other problem that's out there too is that let's say you find it in there, they don't always have a link back to your site, and you can't track it well. So that doesn't mean don't do this, but the tracking is harder, right? So let's say I have the best vibe coder, it puts our name in there, but it doesn't actually put a link back to us. So different AIs do, some do, some don't, depending on how they wrote it. So what people do is they'll paste our name, Baytech Consulting, put it in a browser, and then find us that way. Well, we're not tracking that, so we don't know that it came from that. So tracking AEO is hard, but it's still a viable strategy. Go ahead.
But at the end of the day, you're doing it all. The reality is you have to do it all, and you're not always going to know where it's coming from. But in order to be on top of the game, you have to do it all. You have to have that continuity everywhere someone looks, whether it's through Yelp, Google, Claude, ChatGPT. What they find needs to be excellent, and that whole process from them first searching to finding you to deciding to work with you, all of that needs to be seamless, excellent, and reducing as much friction as possible.
It's 100%. In our industry, I think it's like 15, 16, 17 times before they actually make a decision to contact, a company like ours. I don't know if it's the same with a realtor, probably something similar. So
Yeah.
if you're in all the searches, you're in all the different places that realtors need to market in, and they, 100%.
So that being said, there's a lot going on here. One of the things I've heard is that people are really opposed to being sold with AI and having everything be AI. And I've heard that from enough people to I believe it. But could you touch on that in regards to like AI generated content, videos, and how is that working? And at what point do you need to be a human and have a human to human interaction?
I don't know if I know the answer to this question, but I can tell you my opinion. I had the same opinion, right? So like a blog, am I going to read a blog from AI? Well, if you think about it, at the beginning, I think a lot of people had that same opinion. Like, okay, I want to read from a real person, but we're also using ChatGPT. We're also using Gemini to ask it a question, which is the AI doing it. So, when it comes down to like for us specifically, the informational content, I had a particular topic that I thought was relevant for that time period, right? So let's say it was an article last week, right? I'm looking at the news of the day, and then I want to do a comprehensive article, something that I will read. And I think if you take that approach from a real estate perspective or from a property management perspective or any perspective, hey, this is what interests me, but I wanted to get more in depth about it. AI is going to do a great job. So back to the question: are people going to consume, AI content? I think they are. I think at the beginning it was kind of like, oh, I don't like it. If you're doing it, you're cheating, right? But it's gotten to so prolific that that, I mean, you don't really have a choice. I don't know what percentage it is of the internet that is using AI, but I think it's big.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to what's the intent of the person that's producing that content, and what's the quality of that content that they're producing. So that's kind of how I see it. I think it's out there, it's happening. I don't think you can fight the wave.
And can you give us a little bit of a breakdown in regards to what the landscape looks like right now? Because there's so many different tools and so many different names. It gets confusing. But could you give us a breakdown of that landscape and a little bit of information into each of those different platforms?
Yeah. So, for real estate professionals, there's a lot of different tools out there. I think the big one that came on was OpenClaw. I think the fad, the stats that I'm seeing, or what I'm seeing from people in my industry, is the fad of that is kind of dying down, and they're increasingly gaining competition from big players, right? So you have Claude, you have Perplexity, OpenAI, even Google. I think is doing something related to something that's going to compete against OpenClaw. I don't think it's out. Also, Microsoft.
So what is OpenClaw? Because we know White Claw, but what is OpenClaw?
So OpenClaw is a tool where you can. It's actually challenging to set up, so that's why a lot of people are having some issues with it. I would say it's really built for somebody that's highly technical. They're making it kind of easier. There's some people that have built websites and built easier ways to get it up and running. But it's a tool that you connect agents, AI agents, to your systems, right? So let's say you log onto it, you get it configured, and you want to connect it to all your emails and all your calendar information. So that's kind of one of the first use cases that I've seen out there is I want it to read every email that comes in and then respond to it, right? Or I wanted to, one of the stories I had, which was really great, was my brother's daughter, actually my brother's son's girlfriend. Anyway, her dad works in the media industry. He does like big multi-million dollar homes and does all the media for it. And he created an OpenClaw email responding, kind of like an agent that responded like he would respond. So he put all the information in. It's pretty easy to set up. You just basically give it a bunch of information and you tell it what you want it to do. So what the cool story was this. So his daughter wanted to get her paper done for college, which is a whole nother subject we could talk about. But anyway, she's like a 5.0 student, amazing. She just couldn't do it in the time frame, and she called her dad and said, "Okay, hey, I want to. Can I use your AI to do it?" And he goes, "Yeah, no problem." So she sends an email to the AI to create the report for her. Then it sends him an email saying, "Hey, do you know what your daughter's doing? He says, so it's just okay if I do this." And then he responded,
No
"Yes, you can do
way.
that." Yeah. So that was a pretty cool story. My personal experience with OpenClaw, it's a little different. Like I did investigate a lot of entrepreneurs and were asking me about it. So I finally ended up pulling out. I waited a little bit because there was a lot of news about malicious software in it, which is I don't know if it's today because I've stopped using it, but at the time it was like 20 to 30% of the tools and skills within OpenClaw had malicious code. And when I used it, I was going to connect. We use Office 365 or Microsoft technology for our emails. I was going to actually use one of the skills to check my emails, and I scanned the code myself, and I saw in there where they were logging people's authentication codes to a server. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't use it, obviously. I created my own, which is
What would that
also,
mean? Malicious? What is that? What's an example of that?
yeah. So 20 to 30% of the skills on OpenClaw. So what in OpenClaw, you can say, hey, I want you to connect to Gmail. I want you to connect to Slack. I want to connect to Teams. So you have these skills that will allow you to do it. So when you're in it and you're chatting with it and say, hey, create me an email agent that listens to all my emails. Well, before you do that, it's got to connect to your email and you got to give it credentials. So you're giving it these credentials that have access to all your calendars, all your emails, or
Oh,
whatever it is that you're giving it to, your Google Docs, your Microsoft documents. So you're authorizing on your behalf this agent to do this work. So in the instance that I was working on, there was a skill for it that a lot of people used. It was top on the chart, but in it, it logged out your token. So now it logged the token, so your security token, to somebody else that can get into your information.
ah,
So there's a lot in there. So OpenClaw can do a lot, and it can do things like I've seen a lot of different tools on there. Videos of people that were doing OpenClaw, and one of the use cases was, okay, listen to all this information, gather all this information, and then create me an estimate. So a lot of people were building estimate software where they would connect to their systems and say, because estimates sometimes take a long time. For us, they did. They still do. Actually, we did build an AI automation tool to help us with a lot of that. But So they would build it, and then it would produce some report. One of the things I would say about the OpenClaw, what I see is that, as a software developer, you can build a much better system. So this is one of the benefits of being a software developer, is that even though you can do some of this stuff in OpenClaw, the actual if you have an engineer do it for you, they know how to manipulate these systems, and they can read the code that gets created because it creates code for you. These agents, it creates code for you. And some of the tools that I've seen that people make, actually, the one that I did make was an autoresponder. I did an agent autoresponder. It didn't feel right. Right. So one of the things that it built was I built an autoresponder for Form EO. This is one of the tools for EO. I built one in there for OpenClaw, and it did it. But what it did is it generated a ton of token usage, probably like $50 a day, just listening to emails and responding to them. I won't get into the details that much, but I said this. One of my friends in EO, actually one of Gary, who got me into EO, he goes, you can just write this better. I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to figure out OpenClaw. So I agreed with them, and then I built my own. And so I built my own that has a full dashboard of, like, you can see all the emails that came in, auto responded to it, built the brain inside of it. So that's an example of, if you're a software developer and you know how to build software like this in general, it's far better to do it that way. And OpenClaw just burnt through a lot of tokens, and it does it in the background a lot of times. I mean, you can have to build a UI too, but in general, it just does it in the background, and you don't know. It's like magic what's happening, right? So the control over it, and the amount of tokens that it burns on a daily basis, I think it's going to be hard for a normal user to regulate that or to control that. There are ways you can do it. So anybody out there that has done this, they can say, hey, don't, there's ways to mitigate that, but you have to be really technical to, fix that. Okay. So that's OpenClaw. I don't know if I answered all the questions related to OpenClaw, but go
You
ahead.
did. But to put in perspective, it's all magic for us. So
Yeah, I can't build a
everything you're
brain.
saying is magic.
It is. And that's part of the problem. It's like, you can tell it to do a lot, it will do a lot, and then it will do it however it does it in the background, and you don't get to control or see it. And you can run it across a lot of problems. So enter the competition. So Claude Cowork, right? So Claude Cowork, they recently are trying to make it so that you can communicate very similar to how you can do it in OpenClaw. That was the other thing that OpenClaw did that was really cool, was you, from your phone, you can chat with your OpenClaw through Telegram, through WhatsApp, through all these different channels. Takes a little bit to set up, but you can be, on a bus or driving somewhere, or hopefully not
On a
driving
train to
a
San
passenger
Diego.
seat. You can be at lunch, whatever, and you can give it commands to check, right? Check my emails, create agents. You can have it do all that on the go. So one of the things they've done with Claude Cowork is they are allowing you to do that. But here's the difference. When you use a skill in Claude Cowork, those are curated skills, right? And they're not going to have viruses or malicious software in it. Same thing with Perplexity. So Perplexity is another tool. You guys probably used it for news. I don't know if you guys have ever used perplexity.ai, but I use
You're
it
the
for,
only one that uses it for news. And when we talk, you always say, oh, you must use it for news. I didn't even know it existed until you told me.
yeah. So,
Yeah, also not
I mean,
using it for news.
it still has its problems. It's only reading the news. So whatever it produces, it's still reading news that's out there. So it's, kind of aggregating that information. So
But that's Perplexity, it's called?
yeah, perplexity.ai. But the reason why I bring it up in this context is they have one called Perplexity Computer. So that's a competitor to the same type of idea behind your OpenClaw or your Claude Cowork. I definitely used it to where, okay, go to Perplexity Computer, and I wanted it to do an investigation into a particular project that I was working on. It did an amazing job, produced amazing documentation, which then I was able to quickly be able to give that information to my client, which helped me, further that deal along, close the deal. So those are the type of tools I would use. I wouldn't use OpenClaw unless you really, really are technical and you know what it is that you're doing and what skills you're using on there, or you're creating your own skills, which I think is just a bridge too far for most, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Dan, are you using any OpenClaw or Cloud Code or Perplexity Computer? Or
No, I generally have my AI sprints after I hang out with you. So my
I know
next
a
sprint
lot's
will
clicking
probably
for
be
me
on
right now.
Sunday after we spend the weekend in what is LA that we're going to.
I had a question for you when it comes down to like property technology. What is, I think it's moving fast as well. It's not an area that I'm into as much, but what are you seeing in property tech? I mean, sensors in homes, going back to a central location so you can
Sure.
better respond to maintenance.
Yeah, so PropTech was huge for a really long time, and investors dumped billions and billions into it. But one of the things that, as the practitioner, we always looked at is what is the cost. And there was a lot of companies that came out with those sensors. They would track everything. They would tell you before your air conditioner was going to go out. They'll tell you this or that. And for me, I'm like, okay, so you're gonna tell me before my air conditioner goes out, which is great, but you're also going to charge me, $2,000 in hardware costs, another $1,000 a year in monitoring costs just for me to tell me something that's inevitable. So a lot of that went nowhere and just completely fell on its face. It was just too expensive, cost prohibitive, and at the end of the day, it wasn't really saving you any money. It was just telling you before things failed. Now there are other platforms like Moen has a smart valve that you put onto your water main line going into your home, and it will track irregular water usage. Or if you have like a pinhole leak, it'll track micro usage of water and then be able to tell you, hey, there's something going on. Do you have a sink on? Do you have a faucet? Or you have a broken sprinkler, and it'll automatically, well, you can have different settings, but it will automatically shut off, or it'll tell you, say, hey, we're going to shut off in 30 seconds if you don't tell me this is normal. Like, so much so where if you take a shower in the middle of the night and the AI determines that this is an abnormal water usage, it'll just shut the water off to your house or shut the water off going in from the main, which is wonderful. So those actually prevent a lot of damage and are helpful. But a lot of the home monitoring systems, those become less useful because it just tells you the inevitable and it charges you a lot for it. So I think PropTech is now taking that evolution where they're realizing what people actually want, what they're willing to pay for, and they're providing it. Within our space, we're looking AI for really everything, even from getting companies up and started, having live or websites live in the matter of minutes, updating them more frequently, or even on the property management side of our business, we're looking at an AI essentially platform to triage the hundreds of maintenance requests we get every given week, and be able to read it, respond, and determine, is this an emergency? If it is, we'll have a human step in. But imagine that taking the onus off humans for responding to property management maintenance requests 24/7, day in, day out, weekends, holidays, and everything else. So there's a lot of opportunity there. But at the same time, even with us, where we're implementing that AI on the property management side, we're putting it in a sandbox, because what we don't want is an AI bot to go and, a tenant calls and says, water's pouring out of my walls, and it says, cool, we'll call a plumber, they'll be in there in the next 2 or 3 days, or send an electrician instead, or something like that. So we're still monitoring it to ensure it works correctly. And those are the bigger ones. But on a day-to-day basis, we're looking at all of the AI platforms to be able to help us, keep up with clients, provide better communications, better information, tap into a lot of our legacy SaaS platforms who are really reluctant to allow anyone into, and ultimately just be able to service our clients better without putting all of the time and responsibility on the humans in the office, because it's a really capital and human intensive industry, and we're trying to minimize that and really provide a lot of help to our team members. So across the board, yes, but it's not easy, and I don't know if there's a clear pathway. We see a lot of people posting about all these amazing things we're doing, and it sounds great. I've obviously not obviously, but I haven't seen it run live myself, but I'm really skeptical that it's as flawless and wonderful that a lot of people are claiming that they're building these, whatever it is on OpenClaw over the weekend from their kid's soccer game.
Yeah, it's funny. You're talking. So it's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, you're there. You're operating a business. You're communicating with your clients, and then putting that technology in. You in our space, it's definitely something that we've seen. I don't. You guys seen the articles where AWS, let go of so many people, and they've automated or they've created a lot of code, and then boom, stuff goes down. Right. One of the things that I'm seeing in our industry is where people, it was articles recently, but I don't need an article to tell me, is, when we generate as a software development, company or individual engineer, and then you can generate a lot quickly. Well, do you even know what it's doing? And I think the dark code or gray code is what they're terming it as. So, the rubber meets the road with us. We have to have a solution for our client. We have to be able to maintain that code for our client. So finding that balance and understanding all the code that gets generated from AI, or even all the code that gets generated from AI, we have to be able to wrangle that in. And that's been a challenge for us for, this last probably year and a half is we have to meet the needs of our client as well as understand what gets created and maintain it. So Shannon, what are you seeing in the, what are you seeing in the industry right now, the real estate
For
property
I
management?
mean, the age demographic and how different people, there's just so many realtors in general, right? And everyone does things the way that they do it. It's a lot of push for people to embrace AI, integrate it into their businesses. It's a lot of conversations and a lot of people really screaming from the rooftops. Remember when we all were opposed to the internet and the internet was going to ruin the industry? And, that was back in the day when you had to dial up a realtor and have them look into their, I don't know, I wasn't even there during that days. I've heard stories though of, you had to search a home through realtors. They were the only ones with the list. And so when the internet came, that just made everyone think the world was ending. And a lot of the people that have really embraced AI early on and integrating it into their businesses are screaming, this is the internet times 1,000. Like, you need to embrace this. You need to embrace this now because it's not going to go away and it's going to completely change everything. And if you don't start learning, trying to figure it out, working it into how you structure your business, you will be left behind.
Even for instance with us, Shannon, you're a part of the conversation, but we at any given time we have 10 to 50 rentals on the market, and that's 10 to 50 updates that we need to be providing to clients, which was just incredibly time consuming. I mean, we'd have like 5 people working for an entire day to update all of our clients on their listings. We created a platform where we create all the prompts in OpenAI and ChatGPT. We created a spreadsheet that pulls the data directly from our showing software and inputs into the spreadsheet. We put in some minor notes in regards to feedback we're getting. And then OpenAI pulls all of that data, puts in or writes a very eloquent update, puts in real time market information, is able to make recommendations. And what used to take 5 people 8 hours each to do, it's now taking them 5-10 minutes each, and it's just saving so much manpower while producing a significantly better result for our clients and our company
Can you
overall.
build one of those for me? Because I'm still typing out my updates on Mondays.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I definitely agree with you, Shannon and Daniel. You embrace it, or you're going to be left behind. I think it is that big of a shift. What is it, the horse to the car, or whatever it is. People. You know, a lot of people think that, and it's definitely going to affect industries differently. I can speak to mine specifically. What there's 1.8 million developers, and last year, what it was on average, 15,000 developers lost. It shrunk, and then 30,000 in January. I think there's now some people are pulling back, right? So it goes back and forth. When it's harder, 20% harder for a software developer coming out of college to get a job, at least it's lower, meaning they're not getting jobs. So it's definitely going to have an effect. And I think the people that do embrace it are going to be more effective. But I think it's just a shift, and these other people are going to either learn or go to another job, or eventually, augment the economy in a different way. I don't think it's a zero sum game. I think there is going to be some pain. That's just my gut reaction. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Nostradamus or Elon Musk, but I think there's going to be an adjustment. But I don't think we're going to be doing away with humans. I think it's just going to augment us.
Yeah,
As
you gotta
humans
roll with
got
it.
better.
But in regards to that, there's certain things that only humans can do, and it's having those human-to-human conversations. I was mentioning before we started recording, I was at an AI conference where one of the head technologists for Rocket and Rocket Mortgage, Rocket Companies, was talking, and he kind of said a lot of things, same things that you said, Brian. Is like, yeah, you could build AI around it, you could build technology around it, but do you need to? And then Elon is famous for saying like most engineers optimize things that should never exist in the first place. So he's smart, and I think the sense of saying, what do we actually need to build? What's the purpose? Or are we just overcomplicating this and a human could do this 10 times better without any technology? And we need to have a human in the mix here and stop trying to replace, everyone and everything
Everything.
with
Yeah.
AI. Because like
Yeah.
Shannon, you're incredibly gifted at that human interaction, that human component, where no one could replace you. Me, on the other hand, a computer could do it better than I can. But for you, for instance, no, absolutely not. So that's where people need to realize, understand there's always going to be a place for humans. There's people who don't want to talk to AI, and there's things the AI is incapable of doing when it comes to that human component, where real estate is so much of a relationship in human business.
Mm-hmm.
That Rocket Mortgage and Quicken and mortgage companies in general have been trying to automate that process, and they've done a pretty good job, pretty well. But when you are making your largest decision in your life, do you want to just press a button, or do you want to talk to a human? And that industry has been fighting that concept, and the human have won. You know what I mean? You definitely want to talk to a human when you're dealing with probably
Remember,
real
They
estate
talked
purchase and everything else. Go ahead.
they talked about that specific thing at the talk, and they were saying that they have an option where it's a completely automated process. They don't ever have to talk to a human, and everyone has that option at the very beginning. Less than 1% of people actually click it. And it's interesting. But on the flip side, like, I remember when I go buy a car and you go talk to the car salesman and this and that, and then I bought a Tesla, and you just order on your phone. There's no human interaction. I loved that.
it was scary how
So
easy.
yeah, so there's different components there, but
Do you
absolutely.
remember when we did the mastermind panel? I think we did it early last year. So all of this has changed a million times since then. But the lender that was on the panel, she was talking about how she started an email conversation with someone that was like ready to go, and so she starts doing her thing, pre-approving, and then she was realizing that there had been an entire email chain, and I'm assuming it's something her company had done. And she's like, I did not know that I had been talking to this person extensively for a couple of days at that point. So she's like, I went back and read the whole thread. So I don't know at what point it transitioned over to her being the one responding. But she's like, and the answers were good. They were what I would have answered. It was accurate information. And it got that lead all the way to the point that she was at, first human interaction from her perspective was now, pre-approving and getting this person locked in. So how do we do that? Because
Yeah.
it worked in a
And then
way.
you don't want the agent or the sales rep or whatever to have to read all those. So then, they're doing techniques to summarize what happened, right?
Mhm.
So, we do that quite a bit in software now. Like we're, chains of information, and like, hey, especially for software development, somebody comes in, we're talking about a problem for so long. Well, we build tools to summarize exactly what happened, so we don't have to read through. That was the other thing I was gonna talk about as you guys were talking is the human in the loop. That's a big concept now in software development, but I think it really is going to be across the board. It's kind of what you touched on, Shannon. It's the human eventually comes in, and then there's different aspects to it. One is checking the work, being able to correct the work, to be able to take that work to the next step, right? And there was an article I was reading the other day about software developers where they were being able to be so effective, right? And it almost became a game where they were just working late hours, but then they got exhausted because of how much complexity was in their lives, right? So I wonder, from a human in the loop standpoint, AI is going to do a lot for us, but now our worlds are more complex, right? So there's a lot more things happening, and we are going to have to adjust it because AI is not perfect. It's going to make mistakes. We need to review what's going on. But now what's happening is so much more complex. So instead of doing, let's say you had an operator doing property management that did 50 by himself, but now he's doing 200 because he's using AI tools to, help automate his world. Well, now you have 200, and you have to, when you're jumping into any of these, you're not really in it anymore, right? So when you were doing the 50, you understood exactly what the 50 properties were and you knew what was going on. You can answer those questions, but now you have 200, and now you have to jump in and deal with a problem. And now you have to really investigate what's been happening, right?
Mhm.
I think that's going to be an interesting, trend in the future. It's definitely a trend for software development.
And that's a great point, something I wanted to talk about. Thank you for reminding me. People are saying that software developers are going to go extinct, that there's no use for them. And I think that's totally wrong. And you brought this point up where you, as a software developer, can utilize AI to create what you want to in a much more efficient and effective manner than what we could making things up. And likewise, even for property management, you could have AI do the majority of the triaging, but for the most part, a human still needs to be involved, in a really great property manager, a really great realtor will their output will be improved by AI, but they won't be replaced no matter what people say. And you have a great point here that I'd love to hear you tell our viewers and our listeners in regards to how that's the industry is shifting for a software developer in the age of AI.
At the moment, this is what I would say about the software development industry. I think it's harder to get into it, right? So let's say you classify software developers into, I'm just going to classify them into categories for myself, like somebody that's in college now that is, or maybe a couple years of experience, maybe somebody that's been in it for 10, 15 years. That's category two. Category one, people have been doing a long time, but also excellent at their job, and know a massive amount of technology, which is where I fit in. That particular person can be a lot more effective. Somebody that doesn't know anything about technology yet or is just learning about it, they don't have the breadth of knowledge of what even exists out there from a standpoint of integration, systems, concepts, I don't know, patterns and architecture. I think that's going to be from an industry perspective, and who's going to be effective, who's not going to be effective, is going to be a issue for them to get a job. That's why you see 20% down. I was at one of an EO event, and one of the guys had a guy coming out of college, and he wrote a resume. He goes, "I haven't gotten any." He goes, "Hey, change this to vibe code engineer," right? And then he got a job. But again, the rubber meets the road when he actually gets in there, and is he actually doing it? But my main point is, let's say you categorize those developers into those three topics or three sections. The guy that's been doing it forever is going to be a lot more effective, right? And I think that's going to be the way for any scenario. So property managers, right? So imagine you had a property management team and you got 20 people, and somebody was really kind of doing a tier 3 job where they were just responding to emails back and forth. Well, I think those jobs are at risk.
Yeah, but like one of the things you said, and you said it made so much sense when you told me. It's like you don't know what you don't know. So if you're having something vibe code for you, you think it's great because you have no idea, but you're going to look at it and be like, what are you doing? And even from my perspective, I'll be chatting with whatever Gemini or ChatGPT, and it'll give me a response. And I look at it and I'm like, you're absolutely wrong. You missed this. This is not correct. What about this? And it's like, oh yeah, you're completely right. I was wrong. Here's the information that you really need. Someone who doesn't know will never even know that they're getting the wrong information. For you, it could kick out code that you're like, you're crazy, do it this way instead. But the average person will have no idea.
Yeah, and that's a huge risk. They call it gray code or whatever. I think it was, like I said, the term that came out the other day. You have all this code that's being written specifically for software, the software industry, that people don't even know or if ever seen, and you don't know how it works and you don't know how it operates, and it could be at risk or a risk to attack. I think that's a whole subject. But if you've been doing it a long time, and a long time doesn't necessarily, you can be a mid-tier developer that's just really excellent. So it really comes down to how much do you know about software and how it's built. So the higher level of skill that you have, the more control you have over it. And I think that's going to, like I said, translate over to all the different industries out there when you're using AI in general. It's interesting too, is that people are building tools to help solve that problem in software development. It's such an interesting industry because we are doing our best to somehow code ourselves out of work. And it's just accelerating at a fast pace. I don't actually I'm not really depressed about it because I feel like I've been in it for so long that it just gives me more and more, ability to, provide, solutions to my clients. So I feel very, very secure in what I know and what I do and how I can help a particular company with software. But it's definitely would be daunting for somebody coming into the industry. But you're absolutely right. So if you're out there vibe coding and you're brand new and you don't know anything, I've seen it. I have a lot of people in the industry, a lot of friends that are trying to do it where they just say, "Hey, build this." Well, you don't really know what you have, and you definitely need somebody to take a look at it. It depends on exactly what it is we're talking about, like what you're trying to build, and how you're trying to do it. But some things are easier, some things you can get by with. But in general, you're right, Dan. Like it could really go sideways. Was the Spider-Man with great power becomes great responsibility or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Bryan. So one of the big topics on the market right now in the industry is SaaS products and people replacing their SaaS products, their legacy products, with vibe coded platforms. I remember I was at one of the last conferences I was talking about, and this is a massive company with tens of thousands of employees. They said they replaced their HR SaaS platform and saved themselves, I think it was $6 million a year. They vibe coded it in 2 weeks with their internal team, and they're saving $6 million a year. Can you talk about that and what's going on in the industry?
Yeah, that's very true. 2 weeks for a $6 million a year product, my gut reaction to it is that particular company wasn't using all of that software or, the breadth of it. And that's common, right?
Yeah.
So think of HubSpot, right? So that's one of the big players out there, Salesforce and HubSpot. They sell you on this system, and you're spending sometimes, small players, 500, 1,000 to 50,000 to $100,000 a month on, depending on how many users you have and the features you have on that. A lot of these big players, HubSpot, Salesforce, they add all these features that you don't need, right? And don't use, right? So, but you're still paying for them. That model, in my opinion, is going away. So like in your example, the 6 million down to 2 weeks, that tells me that even, the best vibe coding engineers on the planet, you're not going to replace $6 million worth of features, but it tells me that they probably didn't need all those features. They just needed X out of it, right?
Yeah.
Which is really common. So an example, a finance company is using Salesforce. They're spending, $750,000 a year. Within a few months, you can vibe code the majority of what they need out of that, and not pay $750,000 a year, right? That is that's what, you've heard in the news, the SaaS apocalypse.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of A, they're not using all those features, and B, the vibe coding, with the right engineering team can get this done much quicker and replace massive amount of costs. They, in the particular one that I was thinking of, they had, Salesforce, and then all their customers had to have a Salesforce license. Well, if you vibe code it yourself and host it yourself on, some of these, these platforms, GSP, Amazon, whatever, you now own it, and you can have 1 million users, an infinite amount of users. You don't pay a licensing fee to Salesforce or HubSpot to do it. And I think there's real risk in those stocks, and you can see it because the prices went down.
Yeah.
Well, I just
I
love that it's
appreciate that.
tailored to you.
It's
and your
tailored
needs.
to you, and it's also the features that you need and want, which a lot of these companies are. They pack in features. You have a sales team, and some of them are, Salesforce, some of the best in the world, the sales teams that they've had come in and they do the whole sales dog and pony show, and they're incredible at it, like best in the world. I've seen
Yeah.
it's ones that I've seen are just amazing. But now you're in 2-year contracts, and they've sold you on these amazing things they can do, which is another problem in software, right? So they tell you they're going to change your company. In my opinion, you need to have your processes in place before, and then the software needs to meet it, as opposed to the software does all this amazing stuff and I'm going to change my company to fit the software, but it's another topic.
Even implementing it is super expensive. The platforms that we've integrated, implementing it is, tens of thousands of dollars, or even talking with Marnie at a much larger international company, they're spending millions of dollars to implement software that they're spending millions of dollars on per year just to host. And on a much smaller scale, remember you and I were talking last year about a platform to host or to track all of our keys and physical assets. And we were looking at spending like $1,000 a month just to track all the hundreds of keys that we have. We built it in like a week and a half, and now we don't pay anything for it. And we track, 1,000+ keys, computers, cards, everything all the time. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, big and small projects. I think that is a big play. That's a massive area for making entrepreneurs, small, medium, large companies, way more efficient. What software do you use and how do you use it? And are you using all the features that you're paying for from these big platforms? And can you replace it? And the answer is yes, for the majority of it. The answer
The
is yes.
CRMs for realtors, that's a lifeblood of a realtor's business. And I think a lot of them are going to be able to start vibe coding their own.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Okay. So another question I have for you. Imagine I'm a new real estate agent, just got licensed. I don't want to spend the thousands of dollars for a web developer to build my website, but I want to be able to update it, have a strong presence. SEO, AIO. What I'm thinking right now, what I would do with my knowledge is probably run some prompts on Gemini and ChatGPT, deep search, saying, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is my market. This is my value proposition." Or even going back a little bit further and asking it, "Tell me about my value proposition." Once that's developed, telling it everything I want to do and saying, "I want to create a website. I want to create it through V0. Write me the prompt for V0. It's going to kick it out to me. I'm going to copy and paste in the V0, give it the colors I want to use, tell it to publish it, tweak a little bit, host it directly through V0, publish it, probably by the domain on GoDaddy, and then publish it and have it running from there." How do you feel about that? What would you change? What are some tips and tricks that you would recommend to that new real estate agent, or even established real estate agent that wants to do it themselves and wants to stop paying thousands of dollars to their company every year?
Yeah, definitely that's a path, right? So V0 Versal, it's the people that from Versal, they call it V0. Um, that's definitely a way to go. You're right, Dan. What I would do is do deep research. One of the better ones that I think that are out there is Google Gemini Deep Research, where if you're trying to research trends or research your industry, it does a great job. Google is the king, currently of search. So they built a tool into it that does the search. When you're using something like ChatGPT, OpenAI, or Claude, they have to pay somebody to do that search for them because they're not Google, right? So Google, when it built its deep research, it could go on forever. 500 different links it could research and put into its information that it's getting for you. So deep research from Google, I think, is one of the best. So a topic, and then what's your business plan, what's your business say, who am I, what's my differentiators, get all that information. The more the better, right? And if you also have like you said, branding and colors that you see, also you can ask it to give you what you think the best colors are, right? So there's buying colors, red versus blue versus whatever when it comes down to theming, right? So get all that in place. And then V0 Dev, one of the tips I'd give for V0 Dev is kind of give it in chunks, and you can actually have AI help you do that. So let's just say you put this into one of the AI tools like Claude or OpenAI. Said, here's all my information. And you create a project in there and you give it all the information that you researched. Okay, so now I want to prompt V0 from Versal. What's the first prompt? What's the second prompt? What's the third prompt? Right. So because what will happen in a tool like Versal is you'll give it like a book, right, and it will get through some of it. You know what I mean? So you do need to give it in chunks and then wait for it to go. But I think that's definitely a solid approach. And then when it comes down to like integrating into other tools like MLS, that's a different story. But
I didn't know that you had to give it chunks because I just do copy and paste the whole thing. And then from there, update it accordingly.
I'll be chunking.
Yeah, I've been using it quite a bit. We actually built one of the tools that we built for us was an estimation tool. So like a lot of times we'll have meetings where, just like this, and we'll record the meetings, and sometimes it's an hour and a half, right? 2 hours, and we'll have 3 or 4 of them. And it really goes over the plan of, communicating with that client, what their intent is, what they want to build, what they want to integrate. A lot of times then we'll want to do a mock-up of it. I actually built a tool to take the actual videos. Every second it copies an image to a folder of the screen, then it dedupes it to just like the screens of what we talked about. Let's say they were looking at a screen that we really needed to analyze, a spreadsheet or something like that. Then it takes all that, puts it into a project plan. I won't go through all the details of this because there's a lot to it. But then it creates a plan to replicate whatever tool they needed in Versal. And we initialize one prompt. So we automated Versal where it puts the prompt in, then waits till it's done, double checks it, and then goes to the next prompt. So it actually automates the whole process with Versal for us.
Awesome.
But yeah, you definitely want to, and that's just one of the tips I have. It depends on how big it is, right? So like for a lot of times when we're building a pretty large, bespoke SaaS application, it's not going to do a great job if you try to say, hey, build me Salesforce, right? So it's just not going to do it all. So you have to kind of give it in like, phases, especially for something like ours. But maybe if it's a developer, a real estate page and it's like 1 or 2 pages, you can one-shot it for sure.
Awesome. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, wants to learn more about your services and what you could do for their company, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can go to baytechconsulting.com. It's just how it sounds. We have a phone number on there, and we have you can submit to our contact page, or you can reach me to Bryan, BRYAN, at baytechconsulting.com. Happy to talk to you.
And then we'll put a link on all of our recordings. And so, Bryan, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Super fast moving field, very innovative. It is the future. As you said, it's from the, cart and, buggy to the car. Yeah. So now we're getting to the spaceship. But thank you so much. This has been super valuable for us. I've learned a lot, and I know our listeners will as well.
Yeah, incredibly valuable. I'll be watching it back just so I can take notes. I'm going to learn from this.
Thank you, Daniel and Shannon. This is actually my first time being on a podcast. Amazingly enough, I've avoided it. So, but it was a great experience, and I appreciate you guys bringing me on board. And it's awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of AllView 360, All Things Real Estate. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone navigating their own real estate journey. Connect with us anytime on Instagram at AllView 360 and on LinkedIn at AllView Real Estate. Until next time, stay curious and keep your perspective 360.